Undeath has many faces on Golarion. From the mindless zombie to the haunting ghost, the existences that defy mortality come in various shapes. Among them, vampires hold a special position. With their mortal forms and their retained intelligence, some would consider vampirism the most powerful form of undeath. Still, the various vampiric bloodlines of this world might be strong, swift, and gifted with supernatural powers, but they are all driven by inhuman hungers, while also fearing things no mortal considers a threat. The vampiric state is an existential struggle between great might from beyond the grave and being bound by arcane banes. In this chronicle, we look at the origins of vampirism and the various bloodlines found throughout Golarion. These kindred of blood and darkness hold many secrets, and this essay seeks to shine a light into the hungry nights of blood drinkers and breath stealers. The exact origins of the vampiric curse are unclear, and there simply is not one common ancestor for the great variety of vampires that can be found on Golarion. There are, however, some popular theories on the origins of these creatures. Scholars point to the Stregoy as one likely ancestor for many breeds of vampires. Natives of the Netherworld, the Stregoy are creatures of shadows in their original form. However, with the correct ritual, they can be drawn forth from their realm and bound into a physical body. Whatever the source of this ritual, those who performed it for the first time found out that calling upon a Stregoy and binding it into oneself is not a path to power, but to damnation. Shortly after completing the ritual, the Stregoy completely takes over the host body, overpowering the person's soul and using its physical form as an anchor in this material plane. This is how the first Stregoy came into this world, and perhaps the source for many variations of the vampiric curse. Zura is also seen by some as a candidate for the title of original vampire. An Aslanti queen, Zura is said to have been obsessed with a thirst for eternal life, and found the key to that goal in bloody banquets and feeding on her own kind. After her death, her stained soul went to the Outer Rifts, where she would quickly ascend the abyssal hierarchy and become a demon lord. Today, she is known as the Vampire Queen, a sobriquet which fits her role of being potentially the mother of all vampires. Another possible first vampire is Kamazoth, a vampire bat who would become a god. While there is not much concrete proof for this deity to be the origin of all vampires, followers of his faith practice blood drinking and stalking their prey from the shadows. Perhaps this Lord of Stolen Blood has given some of his most loyal subjects the gift of immortality, in exchange for the need to drink the vitae of the living and exist in the shadows, just like their patron god. It is possible that all of these origins could be true, or none of them are. Perhaps the truth lies in a blend of all these ideas. For example, Zura could have been the one who discovered the ritual to bring Stregoy into this world, using them to become a vampire herself, but also unleashing this form of undeath upon Golarion. Perhaps vampiric origins lie elsewhere, but that is a question for another time. Students of vampirism categorize vampires by both their type, or bloodline, and their type of hunger. The most common bloodlines are Stregoy, Noseratu, Moroy, Jungshi, Vetilaranas, and Vicolakas. We can then divide these bloodlines into blood drinkers and breath stealers. Blood drinkers are perhaps the most well-known type of vampires, characterized by their need to drink the blood of the living. Both Noseratu and Moroy are good examples of this category. Breath stealers are vampires who feed on the metaphysical essence of their prey. For example, the Jungshi draw out their victim's breath to drink the life essence, known as qi, while the Vetilarana feed on the emotions and thoughts of mortals. Let us briefly look at these bloodlines, their powers, and weaknesses. The Stregoy were originally inhabitants of the netherworld. In their natural form, they are masses of dark shadow, unable to interact with the material world. However, with the right ritual, a Stregoy shade can be bound to a mortal form. The first sorcerers to perform this ritual and trying to bind a Stregoy to their body were soon overtaken by the shadowy creatures. The Stregoy overpowered their summoners' souls, melding with the flesh of their form. From that point onward, these shadowy creatures were able to walk Golarion and spread their curse. Stregoy fear the sun and are repulsed by mirrors and bright light. Also, they are unable to cross running water. The Stregoy are blood drinkers, and victims that die while they drain them can be turned into their servants. Powerful victims become Stregoy themselves, while weaker prey is turned into a Moroy. It thus is likely to assume the Stregoy used to rule over the Moroy, but in time they became their own bloodline. It is said that the Stregoy despise the modern Moroy, seeing them as nothing but petulant children. When a Stregoy's physical form is destroyed, its original shadow shape escapes and flees towards its coffin. However, if the shadow form is exposed to sunlight long enough, the light of day will burn the shade, bringing true death to these blood drinkers. Rumored to be even older than the original Stregoy, Noseratu are said to be the remnants of mortals who died during great plagues of ancient times. How exactly this translates into a source of undeath is unknown, but the withered appearances of these ancient vampires show that such a transformation leaves one not without scars. Not many Noseratu remain, which is partially driven by the fact that they cannot create new members of their bloodline like other vampires can. Noseratu can, however, turn mortals into thralls through a ritual, and many Noseratu employ mortals enchanted in such a way as guards and servants. The remaining Noseratu in modern Golarion hide among the living, in their own estates or deep in dark dungeons. Noseratu are weak to sunlight and are repulsed by garlic and signs of good deities. However, killing one is no easy feat. When a Noseratu dies, its body explodes into a swarm of rats, and the vermin run towards wherever the Noseratu's cursed coffin resides. If even a single pest can reach it, it will crawl into the coffin, and from it, the Noseratu will slowly reform. One can only imagine the care any vampire hunter needs to take in order to bring final death to a Noseratu, ensuring that not a single vermin escapes. The Moroy are said to be descendants of the Stregoy, and are often seen as the archetypical vampire. To the Moroy, simply hunting for sustenance is beneath them. Why run through the woods after some screaming mortal if you can instead foster a pleasant environment where they will willingly offer their throats to you? To achieve that, Moroy invite guests to their grand estates, host balls and banquets, and soothe their victims into a sense of safety before they feed on them. The only time Moroy will actively hunt is for sport or revenge. Like some other vampires, Moroy are weak to sunlight, garlic, holy symbols, and cannot voluntarily cross running water. Additionally, the Moroy have to be invited into someone's home to enter, which is one more reason for them to invite guests over to their own homes. Also, Moroy can be paralyzed by a stake driven through their heart. Once the wooden implement is in the vampire, they can be destroyed by decapitation and the application of holy water. Of course, one must first get close enough to a Moroy to stake them, and just like their relatives from other bloodlines, the Moroy possess great strength and supernatural powers. Trying to destroy a Moroy without a stake can lead to them dissolving into mist. If the vapors can return to the Moroy's coffin, it can regenerate and return to take revenge on whoever dare to try ending their existence. The Jungshi are a breath-stealing bloodline, most common in Tiansha. Typically, a Jungshi arises from the corpse of a priest or holy worker who died, but for some reason had their soul travel back from the afterlife and into their body. Once their soul returns, the fledgling Jungshi enters a state of repose in which they are haunted by visions and nightmares, the exact nature of these differing from vampire to vampire. However, all Jungshi eventually rise from their tormented rest and aim to cast their suffering upon the world around them. As mentioned, the Jungshi are breath stealers, literally draining their victim's breath to extract their life force. This thirst is also reflected in the way the Jungshi perceive the world. A creature that holds their breath cannot be seen by these vampires. Jungshi also have a so-called fulu, a written-on talisman, attached to their foreheads. These fulu ward off magic, making the Jungshi even harder to destroy. Speaking of their destruction, a Jungshi cannot be killed by conventional means. If they suffer enough damage, they fall unconscious, but quickly return back to unlife. To truly destroy a Jungshi, one must cover its unconscious body with rice or hen eggs. This method of destruction is linked to the Jungshi's general weakness to certain harmonious arrangements of qi, the very force they drain from their victim's breath. Next to rice and hen eggs, these include mirrors, bells, and certain types of wood. Travelers journeying through an area that is known to be haunted by a Jungshi are wise to keep small bells on themselves, and weapons made of dark wood are helpful in a fight against a hopping vampire. Another weakness of the Jungshi is their inherent melancholia that can overpower them when they are reminded of the disconnection from the living. Altars filled with food are one way to trigger this bane, leaving the Jungshi to wallow in it. Another bloodline of the breath stealer variety are the Vetilarana, stealers of thought and mind. Vetilarana arise on the death of a person with psychic or occult abilities who refuses to shed the mortal coil. These individuals cling on to life without having any unfinished business left in this world. The dying psyche of these creatures essentially reanimates its own body, a testament to the great mental powers of these Vetilarana. They even use their mental capabilities to perceive the world around them, developing an innate thought sense that makes them aware of any intelligent creature in their vicinity. These vampires hunger after thoughts and memories. Vetilarana drain memories from their victims, eventually causing their prey to become comatose for as long as the Vetilarana lives. Even worse, should the Vetilarana's physical form be destroyed, their minds can slip into these comatose bodies and live on in them. Combined with the fact that these vampires have their victims' memories, they can fully usurp identities and take over the life of their prey. The only way to truly end a Vetilarana is by destroying their brain. Once the vampire expires, any victim still stuck in coma has their stolen thoughts slowly return. Depending on how long they have been stuck in slumber without their memories, it can take weeks, months, or even years for them to stitch it all back together. The Vetilarana have a few weaknesses that those who encounter them can exploit. These vampires delight in stealing their victims' most intimate thoughts, but what good is that if said intimate thoughts are loudly shared with the world? Sharing a deep secret out loud is repulsive to the Vetilarana, and a great method to keep them at arm's length for a while. Additionally, Vetilarana's mental abilities are hamstrung by cold iron and force energy. They cannot project their senses through barriers made of these materials, and their mind cannot travel into a new body if it is trapped within something made of cold iron or force energy. Surrounding a Vetilarana's victim with sheets of cold iron is one way to prevent its mind from fleeing into that body, and if this is done to all their victims, the parasitic mind has no host left to flee to and will perish. One final bloodline I want to present are the bestial Vicolakas. These vampires rise from the bodies of those who were wicked in life and did not receive proper burial rites. The curse changes the physical form of the Vicolakas, turning them into hunched, hairless creatures with dangerous claws and fangs. They are wild and ferocious blood drinkers, surrendering to the most primal aspects of vampirism. Powerful Vicolakas can create their own spawn by donating their blood to a living creature and then burying them for 3 days. Vicolakas have fewer weaknesses than other vampires. They do not burn under the light of the sun and are not repulsed by garlic or other substances. However, every Vicolakas is bound to the side of their grave, and every few days has to return there and sleep in the soil of it. In that time, a Vicolakas is vulnerable, and it is for that reason these vampires conceal the location of their burial site or use their spawn to protect it while they slumber. When a Vicolakas is destroyed, their mind can slide into the body of nearby animals. An animal possessed in this way will travel to the Vicolakas' burial site and then immure itself there. If the animal is not destroyed, it will slowly transform into the Vicolakas that possessed it, giving it a new body and tool in the endless hunt for blood. Locating a Vicolakas grave is thus essential if one wants to destroy it for good. Make no mistake. The thirst for blood or metaphysical forces can take many forms outside of those mentioned here. And those who stalk the dark parts of the world must understand what dangers they hold. Thank you for watching this video. Have vampires played a role in your Pathfinder campaign? Or do you have any cool ideas on how to use these bloodlines in one of your games? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, stay safe, take care, and bye-bye!